This episode of the Beamable Game Dev Podcast is an update with what's going on within the company and the current game jam that we're helping out with. Let's jump into it. It is another Beamable podcast, and here I am with Allister. Allister, you got to help out with the Saudi Arabia game jam, and so this is kind of what's happening with Beamable, kind of just some updates on some things that are going on, and so I thought we could just sit down and kind of chat a little bit about the game jam and what your role was with the game jam.
Yeah, so basically my role was to introduce Beamable to the Game Jam participants. So the Game Jam is still coming up. So this was a training session, kind of introductory session. And I talked about Beamable, showed how to install it, and kind of did a little bit of a guide tutorial for how to use Beamable, and the host of the session recorded it so that all of the Game Jam participants could take a look at it and listen to it in between and prepare for the Game Jam.
What were some of the key features with Beamable that you highlighted for the participants?
So I would say that the main thing that I focused on was the C# microservices. I did touch on some of the commerce features, social features, and data storage, but the key thing that we really kind of focused on was C# microservices, which is a way that Beamable provides to have secure cloud-hosted code for your game that basically it gives you the ability to have a server without needing to have a server, so to speak. And so I ran through the process of how to install Beamable, how to set up your Beamable account, and then rolled right into writing a microservice live. It was just kind of a hello world sort of thing with just a couple of functions, but just kind of coded it up and showed the Game Jam participants how easy it is to put server code in C#, so familiar to Unity developers, into a Beamable microservice that can be hosted on your developer machine or in the cloud.
And in the case of a game jam where it's like, you've got maybe 48 hours, maybe a little longer, what are going to be some of the uses of having that server, and what might be some good ways to implement this into a game?
That's a great question. So basically, one of the things that we strive for with Beamable is to make it as easy as possible to bring Beamable into your project. And as you mentioned, in a game jam scenario where you've got very limited time, you don't want to spend a whole lot of time integrating things. So the simplest thing to do to get Beamable in is to just kind of drag some of the pre-made Beamable features from our toolbox into a Unity scene. And microservices are a little bit more involved. You got to create the microservice and then add some code to it. But with less than a dozen lines of code, you can have server authoritative functions. So the one that I demonstrated in the Game Jam tutorial is how to just hook up a button to grant a semi-hard currency gem. So in the demo project, gems are server authoritative. You can't just get them willy-nilly. The server has to be the one granting them. But given some logic in the microservice, you can say, okay, this player is eligible for some gems. Let's grant them this many gems. And it all goes through the back end of Beamable and fulfills those gems to the player. And it's once you've got the bits and pieces in place, it's just a matter of hitting the play button on the microservice, hitting the play button on Unity, and going from there.
And that's really the beauty of it. And it's cool. Like the last game jam we were part of, like the global game jam, we got to see a login feature was used with Beamable, right? Mm-hmm. And I can imagine being a jammer and looking at something like this, like it might not be like it may be a little bit maybe seem like you're biting off a little more than you can chew, right? But at the end of the day, the whole idea with Beamable is that it's kind of a plug and play, just like one line of code, couple lines of code, and you're ready to rock. So I love that we're getting into these game jams. We have a number of them lined up, so So definitely stay tuned for more details on that. Now you were saying with this one, we were talking a little bit ahead of time. It was the time zone issues are definitely a factor, but it's also super cool that we're able to do something kind of worldwide.
Yeah, absolutely. So there were relatively few attendees at the time of the presentation, which was just a little before lunchtime for me on the East Coast of the United States. But in Saudi Arabia, that's evening time. So I think a lot of the jammers were not kind of around and ready to attend, but because it was recorded, that's something that everybody participating in the game jam can look at and kind of reach out with questions if they have them. There's a Discord connection, so we got things hooked up.
Yeah, and since we're kind of teasing some future jams as well, would you recommend that people go and sign up, download Beamable, start messing with it a little bit before they get into their next potential game jam?
Absolutely. And it's fun to play with. It's really easy to get started. You just go to beamable.com and follow the instructions for getting set up, and within minutes, I would say, you can be playing with Beamable. And there's certainly a lot to play with there, so plenty of features to explore, like leaderboards, tournaments, events. But getting up and running is super easy. And I actually like what you said about biting off more than you can chew. Every game jam experience that I've had has been that, of like biting off more than you can chew, and then like doing the work and then reevaluating at some point, whether it's halfway through or a third of the way through, just being like, okay, here's what we've gotten done so far. Here's what our ambitions were. How do we make that line up? And my hope is that with Beamable and with Beamable Microservices, the amount that we can actually chew, that any given game jam team can chew, is more.
Yes, that's it exactly. Essentially, in some cases, we are bringing a team with the software to their game jam, and I love that. I know we sat when we were doing you and I did a presentation for a different game jam, and it was really cool to watch the product at work, and seeing the multiplayer games, seeing the leaderboards, all that stuff. It sets up so simply and really can help take your game to a whole nother level when it comes to a game jam. And I love seeing that. So yeah, we do recommend go to beamable.com, start messing with it, because when the next game jam comes up, I don't know many details right now, but oftentimes our past game jams have involved a cash prize for using and being for implementing the software. And so if you are hearing this and you're going to be participating in one of our future game jams, I would suggest getting familiar ahead of time, just to save yourself a little bit of time. So, Allister, thank you so much for taking the time, kind of giving us just the update on what's going on with Beamable, and it's always a pleasure.
Yeah, glad to. Likewise, it's always a pleasure to sit with you, Josh.
Bye now. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Beamable Game Dev Podcast. If you'd like to hang out with other game devs, make sure to jump into our Discord. That's discord.gg/Beamable. And if you'd like to try Beamable for free, head on over to beamable.com.